Ofsted chief Amanda Spielman has claimed that white working-class students lack the aspiration and drive of migrant communities. So while Ofsted is claiming that they are not biased against schools from deprived communities, the Ofsted boss, Amanda Spielman, has recently said that white children from white, poor, working class backgrounds lack the aspiration and drive seen in migrant communities. And we know that this is an old claim. This is an old claim by the far left, that the English community is lazy, we don't have the same aspiration, that don't have the same drive, and that we need immigrants to do the things that we don't want to do. Spielman's the chief inspector of schools, and she recently said specifically, many local working class communities have felt the full brunt of economic dislocation in recent years, and perhaps as a result can lack the aspiration and drive seen in many migrant communities. But she also told the Festival of Education recently that Ofsted wasn't biased against the white working class. Well, really? There's multiple stories that I think show otherwise. Do you remember in 2014 when a primary school in Lincolnshire was marked down by Ofsted, by inspectors, for not having enough Asian and black children, as if diversity dictates quality of learning. In 2013, the Ofsted chief at the time, Sir Michael Wilshaw, said that England's schools were failing white working class children. And in 2016, do you remember this, when a nursery was penalised by Ofsted for not being diverse enough? These are the constant attacks against white working class communities that tell them, you're not good enough. You're not. Imagine the damage you do to children. Okay, put it this way, actually. Imagine you had a class full of black kids, and these inspectors came along and told the parents and told the kids, well, sorry, you're too black. There's too many of you in this class. Imagine what that does to children. And make no mistake, the kids at these schools hear about this. The kids at the schools hear about it. They hear about it from the parents, from the newspapers, from the school. They hear about it. Being told that you're too white. If the white working class community, specifically children, are not as aspirational as migrant communities, do you think maybe it's got something to do with the fact that they're always being put down? Maybe. I mean, it seems obvious, doesn't it? But this is what happens when diversity and equality and all that nonsense is valued above quality education. It's valued more than the real learning experience at schools. And Ofsted even has its own equality and diversity guidelines and approaches and its own goals and all this stuff that's imposed because of legislation, to be fair. But there are questions as well about whether Ofsted even understands the needs of schools in white working class areas. TES reported in 2016 the Education Policy Institute highlighted how schools with more disadvantaged pupils were less likely to be judged good or outstanding, while schools with low disadvantage and high prior attainment were much more likely to be rated highly. The EPI found that secondary schools with no more than 5% of pupils eligible for free school meals were more than 3 times as likely to be rated outstanding as schools in which at least 23% qualified for free school meals. Its conclusion was damning. These findings raise questions about whether the inspection system is fully equitable to schools with challenging intakes. Consider this fact also, in many of these working class and impoverished areas, not necessarily even just white, but in many of these areas, schools are teaching multiple languages within one classroom because not everybody there speaks English, or at least don't speak English as their first language. What do you think happens in these schools where they're teaching in multiple languages? The standard of learning, the standard of teaching goes down. There was a story here that more than 300 languages spoken in British schools today, with many English-speaking pupils becoming a minority in hundreds of classrooms across the country. Is it not obvious when this happens? The standard of learning not only goes down, but we realise that Ofsted isn't equipped to deal with schools like this. Ofsted is out there, rating the higher performing schools as higher performing because they're in middle class areas that are, let's be honest, the more middle class the school is, the more white it's probably going to be. It's actually the traditional white English towns that have been transformed over the last however many years. that are becoming more deprived. There's a couple of reasons for that. Some towns, it's still a majority English sort of school, but these towns have still been affected by the economic crash, and not just that, but mass immigration, even from European countries, that's affected towns like where I'm from economically. But then there are other towns that have been affected by mass immigration from all over the world, where schools are teaching in multiple languages and kids don't know what's going on. Ofsted isn't equipped to even begin looking at these schools. And in fact, the schools themselves aren't even equipped. So it's not just Ofsted that's failing kids, it's the schools as well. The Telegraph further reported on a Daily Express investigation of the Department of Education statistics, and they said the overall number of pupils in state-funded schools in England is projected to increase by 13% to roughly 8.2 million as a result of a baby boom and immigration. In one school, 342 of the 360 pupils say Punjabi is their first language, while just 6 are recorded as speaking English, the report said. This is the real failing of school kids, displacing children from their traditional communities, not considering the needs of impoverished schools, and then denying that that's what they're doing. When the chief inspector for Ofsted says that the white working class lack the aspiration and drive of migrant communities, she's not showing concern for the working class, she's showing her contempt for the working class. Ofsted consistently fails white working class communities while favouring multiculturalism and diversity. To be fair, that's happening because of the government and because of legislation, but regardless, it's still happening. Schools are focusing on equality legislation instead of quality teaching, and Ofsted's not taking into account the damaging effects of mass migration on the working class communities. Families have been broken, young boys driven to crime, and communities transformed in the matter of a generation or so. Ofsted is not fit for purpose. It's time they stopped targeting and demonising schools for being too white and focusing on a quality teaching experience for all instead. If you want to see more from me and the rest of the Rebel team, be sure to download the brand new app from the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store.